Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into something incredibly personal and, well, absolutely vital today, pulling some profound insights straight from the new normal guide. You know, when a patient first hears those two terrifying words, breast cancer, it is a truly overwhelming moment. You'd probably assume the mind immediately jumps to medical charts, survival rates, or surgery dates, right? But actually, more often than not, it goes somewhere much more personal. It jumps straight to the exact question we're looking at right now. So today, we're going to look closely at the fear behind the side effects, unpack the actual on-the-ground science of treatment, and talk about exactly how to navigate the emotional hurdles of this journey. Asking yourself, am I going to lose my hair, my eyebrows, my eyelashes is completely 100% valid. When you get that diagnosis, it triggers this massive flood of emotion that can just feel entirely paralyzing. It's what the source material perfectly describes as the deer in the headlights fear. The reality is, a patient's mind doesn't just jump to the disease itself, it jumps straight to their identity. You think, how will I look? How is the rest of the world going to see me? And honestly, how will I see myself? In this explainer, our goal is to validate that immediate, terrifying rush of emotion, but then, and this is crucial, help you move past it. We want to help you shift that perspective from a purely emotional reaction into a smart, scientifically based plan of action. Okay, let's dive into this. We really need to break down the where and the what of treatment by comparing two of the primary protocols, radiation and chemotherapy. Now, there is this massive misconception out there that all cancer treatment just automatically makes you lose the hair in your head. That simply isn't true. And honestly, understanding the difference between these two treatments is the very first step in taking your power back. It's absolutely crucial to separate the playground mess from the medical realities so you know exactly what to expect. So let's break down each of these treatments individually to see how they actually interact with your body, starting with radiation. Starting with radiation, the most important thing you need to understand is that this is fundamentally a localized treatment. This is a huge distinction. The side effects depend entirely on the specific part of the body being targeted. When medical teams treat the breast with radiation, that specific neighborhood of the body generally doesn't get very unhappy with the treatment. Over a few weeks, a patient might experience something feeling a lot like a moderate sunburn, or maybe a feeling of heaviness in the breast area. But here is the major takeaway. You do not lose the hair on your head from breast radiation, period. Hair loss from radiation only happens if the treatment is specifically targeted at the brain. So if your treatment plan is localized strictly to the breast, your head hair is safe from this specific therapy. Now, flipping over to the other side of the equation, we have chemotherapy. Chemo is fundamentally different because it is a systemic treatment. Basically, that means it's designed to treat the whole body, actively hunting down cells that might have circulated way outside the localized area of the breast. Because it's a system-wide sweep, it can, and often does, affect hair follicles. If your medical team decides that the cancer is a particularly aggressive form, like triple-negative breast cancer, which requires really fast action, they might recommend upfront chemo to literally melt the tumor away. Because of how this medication works throughout your entire body to hunt down those aggressive cells, hair loss is unfortunately a very legitimate, very common reality here. It's a tough truth, for sure, but understanding the biology behind why it happens can kind of help demystify the whole process. When you're going through systemic treatments like chemotherapy, three physical elements are often directly impacted: your breasts, your hair, and your period. And why does this hit so incredibly hard? Well, because these specific physical changes literally rock a patient's confidence to the absolute core. Patients talk all the time about going online, searching for terms like sexy or beauty, and then looking in the mirror and feeling like they just don't recognize the person staring back at them. It feels like this fundamental, earth-shattering shift in womanhood and self-image. The physical changes are undeniable, but make no mistake, it's the emotional weight attached to those physical changes that truly presents the highest hurdle. And this brilliantly illustrates the real issue at hand here: your identity. I want you to just pause for a second and reflect on how tightly our hair, our physical appearance, is tied to our sense of self. When those physical markers get altered or taken away temporarily by treatment, you might feel like your very confidence and identity are just being completely dismantled. But the source material challenges us to ask a really tough question. Is your identity truly wrapped up in your hair? Look, the grief over losing it is profoundly real, and it is completely justified. But we have to look deeper. We have to separate the disease's physical toll from who you fundamentally are as a human being. So, how do we actually navigate this? The answer lies in a process called emotional reconstruction. Step 1, embrace the fear. You don't have to run from it, and you certainly don't have to pretend you aren't scared out of your mind. Acknowledge it. But step 2 is where the magic happens, moving toward hope. Emotional reconstruction means having this realization that your hair, much like your breasts, does not define you. You are defined by your heart. You're defined by your gestures, your character, and the profound love you give to others. Rebuilding your emotional foundation is just as critical as the medical treatments melting away the tumors. By focusing on your true essence, you start to reconstruct an identity that cancer simply cannot touch. To help navigate both the physical and emotional reconstruction, getting your hands on some practical tools can be an absolute lifeline. The New Normal Guide tracking app and physical planner were created because in this lifelong journey, time is actually your friend. By actively logging your progress, you take the steering wheel back. You can track your specific treatment days. You can monitor physical side effects, like that deep running out of gas fatigue, so you know exactly when to rest. And just as importantly, you can manage that little seed of fear that inevitably pops up during recovery. Tracking your days lets you see the big patterns, celebrate those small victories, and realize that the really difficult days, they do eventually pass. Okay, I want to draw your attention to a very specific number right now, 3 to 5. You do not have to run this gauntlet alone, and frankly, you absolutely shouldn't. The source highly recommends building what they call a support entourage of 3 to 5 people you deeply, truly trust. Why that number? Well, it's just enough people to share the burden without overwhelming you with a million different voices. Let this entourage handle the daily logistics. Let them pick up the meds, run the errands, or watch the kids. By handing off those tasks to your 3 to 5 trusted people, the patient is freed up to focus entirely on the only things that actually matter right now: healing, resting, and getting proper nutrition. All right, let's do a quick recap of the crucial scientific and emotional takeaways we've covered today. First off, remember that radiation to the breast does not equal head hair loss. It is localized. Second, chemotherapy targets the whole body, so whether you lose your hair depends heavily on the specific biology of your disease and the specific drugs required. Third, and honestly most importantly, you are so much more than your hair. While this temporary change feels like a devastating loss of identity, it is vital to remember that it's only a season. It's just a season of your life, and it is a season that you will survive. Tracking your journey is going to help prove to you day by day that you are making real progress through that season. I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful thought from our source. Your scars and your journey tell a story of strength, not a story of being lesser. You will survive all of this. The entire goal here is to empower yourself to become an expert in your own disease, to really understand the science, and to embrace the emotional reconstruction required to heal, both inside and out. So as we wrap up this explainer, armed with all this new knowledge and the power of your support entourage behind you, how will you take control of your new normal today? Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you the absolute best on your journey forward.